Hello, and welcome to a special Thursday episode of Midnight Launch News with a special guest. I'm David.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Pedrom.
And it's Pedram, and he's back, and people are like, yes, Pedram, he's the best part of the show. He's our favorite. We're so glad he's back, and him being back means, it can only mean one thing. I'm sick. Oh god, I just coughed on mic. It's so terrible. No, it means we're going to be talking about a lot of World of Warcraft today. Well, sort of. Because there was a developer Q&A for Battle for Azeroth.
Is that what that was?
It was something like that. And we're going to be talking about Overwatch. We're going to be talking a little bit about Hearthstone. Talking about Lara Croft. And then we're going to be talking about a hot button topic that's been around for quite a while that we've seen absolutely no progress on, and that is going to be crossplay between consoles, brought to you maybe by Fortnight. We'll see. But first, we're going to start with the Battle for Azeroth developer Q&A. What did you guys think about it?
It kind of seemed more like the "Hey guys, don't yell at us anymore" Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it seemed to me. They really emphasize the "Hey, if you have things you don't like, by all means tell us, but be specific about it." And they emphasize that throughout the entire thing.
That's fair. I didn't have as much of a problem with that because I could totally understand. Since vanilla, people have complained, "Wow, my class is underpowered. It's not fair." Well, okay, what's not fair? Like, give me an example. Give me something concrete to work with. The thing that was surprising to me was how stupid the questions were that they selected from, because I guess they picked questions from their fans,
From like a forum post. There was a
from
giant
forum posts or
forum
something.
post, and they were like, write your questions here. And I listened to the entire Q&A, and I was like, okay, first off, some of these questions, man, how do we say these questions absolutely sucked without alienating the one fan base that we have? But the questions were like just so softball. They were so bad. You could tell that some of these people were like, man, I'm going to try to sound really intelligent with this question and make it like multi-layered. And oh my god,
And then they ask stupid questions like, is it possible that one faction could get a class and the other faction could not? Because that doesn't scream imbalance. Like,
Yeah, because more specifically, they were saying, "Hey, would one faction get would we ever see a situation where allied races aren't co-released on each side? So one faction gets an allied race while the other one doesn't, kind of thing." And I was like, that is not a good question.
It's never gonna happen. Why would you even ask that question? It's like, are you trying to get them to commit to something that later on you'll be able to go after them for because they made a mistake? Like, I don't even know.
Well,
it really felt like they were scraping the barrel, presumably.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, from the very beginning, they've always wanted there to be, like, if not parity, at least some semblance of balance between the Alliance and the Horde. So there isn't a definitive, like, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It's kind of like whoever you want to play. They've never wanted to give a distinct advantage to one over the other. That's why even from the beginning, when the Horde didn't have access to Paladins and the Alliance didn't have access to Shaman, they were like, this isn't right. And it was the very first expansion where they fixed that.
Yeah.
Where they're like, you know what? We're gonna even the playing field. So why on earth would they give people like a huge incentive to play one faction over the other? It would create pandemonium among the player base.
No,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense. And that was only one of the few like super awkward questions. They touched on, well, I mean, like I've just got this giant list in front of me about everything that they touched on. But I mean, like, what jumped out to you guys that was seemingly a substantial discussion that they had? Because there were a couple decent questions out of like the 30 or 40 that were asked. Which ones to you guys were like, hey, that's a good question. That's some good feedback from the devs. I'd like to maybe learn more about this, or I'm glad this question was asked.
More just what's going to happen with your artifact weapons in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they just going to disappear, kind of thing. That one I felt was good because I don't really think that really they talked about how the abilities would be end up being transferred.
Right. Well, they'll
Um,
like it'll like get stronger, and then it'll get weaker and weaker and weaker. And that was actually one of the questions where I was like, that's
yeah,
interesting to know, because I was honestly there's there's something about being at the end of an expansion and having a really well geared character going into the next expansion and knowing that you don't really have to worry about getting more gear until you're really close to level cap. Like
right.
for people that do a lot of raiding, when you go to a new expansion, your gear is probably going to last you 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 levels, depending on how good it is, before you end up having to upgrade from like quest greens and quest blues and etc. etc. So I was honestly worried, like, during this whole wind down process from this expansion to the next one, that they were literally going to like break or shatter your artifact weapons, and there would be a quest line to get a new green one or a blue one before we go into the next expansion. So I'm glad to learn that that's not the way it's going to work.
Right.
Well, and one of the things that my understanding was that because with many classes, the the functionality of your artifact weapon within your spec kind of guides or at least plays a large part in how you actually play your character. For example, consumption that a Blood Death Knight has. Without that, like I, as a Blood Death Knight, wouldn't know how to tank because it's a critical ability that we use all the time. It's available to use every 45 seconds.
Right.
So I mean, but from what I'm understanding is they're taking some of those more critical abilities and those synergies, and they're actually just going to build them into the character,
Yeah.
so they'll
Yeah.
stay accessible.
Yeah, they're going to be baking in a lot of these traits and a lot of these abilities into the character, depending on whether or not they felt that the artifact ability, for example, made the combat of the class flow better. Like, is it addition through addition, or would it maybe be addition through subtraction? Would this spec feel better to play if they didn't have this artifact ability that they had to hit once every 6 or 8 seconds? Moonken Druid. Like, um, so we'll see. Um, but I am glad that I'll be able to hang on to my artifact weapon, and once I do replace it, I can bank it and kind of just have it be one of the 100 other items that have some sort of sentimental value that are collecting dust in my bank.
Now, I found the changes that they talked about to raid looting um, interesting. I mean, I'm still kind of formulating my thought behind it, but the idea that everything will be personal loot and there will no longer be master loot, um, that's big. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that's like, well, okay, but then there's a part of me that, I've had it both ways, and I don't know. Like, it's gonna be interesting.
So, on that specifically, I listened to that part. Obviously, I listened to the entire thing, but I couldn't quite parse whether or not he was confirming that Master Loot was going to be taken out of the game. Like, I I don't think they can do that. I know obviously they want to move to personal loot, but as far as loot distribution is concerned, there is always going to be an optimal way, or what your raid leader slash guild leader feels is the optimal way to distribute loot among your core progression group. And if, Blizzard were to say, yeah, that's not going to be possible anymore, everything's going to be on personal loot moving forward, um, that would be crazy.
I agree. I mean, and that's just it. Like, it seemed to me like that's exactly what he was saying. They're trying to stop people from being able to uh, target loot specifically in ways to kind of benefit certain individuals, to kind of help some people gear out faster than others. They just want to kind of level that playing field, but I don't know.
Yeah, look, I mean, that is what you're referring to there specifically. I think you're referring to split runs and, talking about like method and these top, literally 0.1% guilds,
Yeah.
that use what some people might consider to be, abuse of loot mechanics in order to gear out characters. But I don't know that you can remove the ability to master loot gear based on something that the 0.1% do that nobody else has a problem with. Like, you have a choice. You can do master loot, you can do personal loot. Is it really such a big deal that Method and these other guilds are running split runs with their, you know, 8 or 10 geared alts that each person has in order to gear out their core group for the first, 2 or 3 weeks of a tier just to try to kill a boss when everyone else, like, it doesn't affect them?
It's true. It's true. But I think at the same time, if they're thinking about truly balancing out, I think there are certain elements of drama that are created when master looting happens, and when you have, of course, in certain situations, and it is always your choice whether to participate or not to participate, but like, loot seems to be one of those things in many guilds and many groups of players that just gets in the way of a lot of relationships, and kind of causes a lot of problems. And this might be what they're a way for them to look at it and say, look, we're just going to take that out of the equation altogether,
Look,
and just make it so that, you know what, like, if it's meant for you to drop, it's going to drop. If it's not, it's not.
the obvious answer is we just give everything to Dan. I mean, why are we even having this conversation? Just give all the loot to Dan. Everything will be fine. And
For like the 1 or 2 times I show
for the
up to
one or
raid.
two times that he actually shows up to a raid, just funnel all the loot to him, and we'll be fine.
Sounds good. I'm on board.
I would love to have a statement from the developers that is extremely direct in their intention. If they're gonna take out Master Loot, I would love for them to say, in the next expansion, Master Looting will not be an option. We are moving over only to personal loot. And, we'll see. Oh my goodness. We will see. Let's move on from that, though. What did you think about the Mythic Plus changes, Ozzy?
I'm happy. I'm happy they're keeping it. I'm exceptionally happy that they're not keeping the the theoretical affixes that they had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the one that I had heard the most buzz about was, and I honestly don't remember what they were calling it, but something along the lines of where uh, everyone gets a debuff to the damage they do inside of a Mythic Plus.
Mm-hmm.
The higher health they have and the lower their health got, then it would reverse, and it would become a damage boost.
Right.
So like kind of enticing people to try to kind of toe the line and keep your health at 50% or lower.
Mm-hmm.
That as a blood death knight is the horrifying thought, because it's like I can't help but heal, and having been in both the tanking and healing role since I've played since vanilla, but tanking and healing since Burning Crusade. Um, I know that as a healer, it's really counterintuitive to want to let your tank get low or let your DPS get low. And I really think it lends itself to a lot more chaos. And it would just, I don't know. I just thought the whole idea of that affix was terrible.
I thought that affix was amazing. I was one of the
Ugh.
ones that was like, oh my god. That's like, because I mean, it's not something you're going to be coming up against every week. It's 1 week, and then it rotates out, and you don't see it for another 6 or 7 weeks. Um, what do you think about dropping Tyrannical and Fortified down to like level 2, as opposed to having them at level 10, or keeping them sort of as a higher echelon affix?
Uh, well, I think it's going to force. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. And the reason I say that is the way Tyrannical stands right now is Tyrannical is incredibly strong. If you look at the top pushing guild, like groups of Mythic Plus people, the weeks that they're pushing the higher keystones is the fortified weeks, because Tyrannical bosses are really, really tough. And
Mm-hmm.
they, and the fear I have with them moving something like that down is now you're gonna have a larger range in which tyrannical can affect you. So those tyrannical weeks are gonna be terrible, because they're
Hmm.
gonna start at like 7 instead of 10 or whatever it's gonna be. And
Right.
so all of a sudden tyrannical weeks are just gonna become weeks that everyone just takes off of Mythic Plus, and I don't want that. Like I
That's
enjoy.
interesting. That's an interesting thought about it. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's scary to me because I genuinely like tyrannical, but I can't imagine if tyrannical has been bolstered from, not bolstered. I know that's an affix,
You're
so I'm not
right.
trying to
Right.
use that. Like it's like not trying to use it in both ways. But imagine, instead of starting the tyrannical at level 10, starting tyrannical at level 7. So
Right.
by level 10, where you're going to get your third affix, you now have increased the potency of tyrannical 3 times. So I feel like it
Hmm.
theoretically could make it incredibly hard, and while I enjoy the challenge, I think it's going to be too hard for a lot of people. And then so it'll just turn into, and what I don't want to happen is I don't want there to be weeks at a time where people go, it's just not worth doing Mythic Plus right now because the affixes are too hard.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. I can't imagine we would get to a situation in which it was that bad. Because, like if the prevailing thought about playing during a certain week is we're not going to play this week because it's too hard, Blizzard's going to do something to fix it. But, I do think you're right. Both the tyrannical and the fortified affixes are affixes that are almost specifically gear checks.
Yeah.
They're extremely hard on gear. It's, do you have the gear? Do you have the execution? And so on and so forth, to like sort of overcome this affix. Where a lot of the other affixes, it's specifically, do you have the execution to not stand in this pool? Do you have the reaction time to tab target over and destroy this orb before it explodes? And those affixes, if you play well, you can down them with lackluster gear. When it comes to stuff like Tyrannical and Fortified, if you don't have the gear to absorb the hits that you are taking from this highly buffed boss or these highly buffed trash packs, then that's it, right? Like, and when you have that affix so early on in the Mythic Plus progression system, the first couple weeks of the expansion being out, maybe even the first couple months of the expansion being out, that's going to increase the difficulty level of, Mythic Plus even further than it already is. So I do wonder if that sort of baked in increase in difficulty and that higher requirement for gear is going to turn off a lot of people from Mythic Plus that otherwise might be really interested in it as something to do in World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I and that's the thing. I want as many people doing Mythic Plus as possible because I enjoy it, and I think I really do feel like it's the best thing to come out of this expansion, and this is my favorite expansion thus far. So, um, I kind of have like a sneaky, like kind of like selfish motive for them to kind of put more effort into Mythic Plus and make sure that it stays amazing because
Right.
the more people that do it, the larger the pool of people we have to pull from, because I'm not afraid to pug. So I will group up with random people. Sometimes it goes great, sometimes it's absolutely terrible. But I don't want a situation where that well of people dries up and
Mm-hmm.
you get, nobody who wants to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Let's go ahead and move on to something that Dan can talk about. Because, boy, he has been awfully quiet.
I am
Um,
cruising Amazon right now.
well, you're gonna have to talk here because we're gonna talk about something that I absolutely hate, and those are alts within World of Warcraft because that is actually something that they also covered within this developer Q&A, talking
My
about.
forte.
Oh my goodness! So I guess the first question to ask you too, and this coming from the position of someone that hates alts, so I think the leveling process of an alt is terrible no matter what. We'll start off with you, Dan. What did you think about the leveling process overall for alts within Legion? Did you think it was an alt-friendly expansion, or did you think, the artifacts and artifact power just completely turfed your want to level an alt?
Um, what turf my want to level an alt is the fact that we play on a PvP server, but that's not really the question or the
Well,
answer to the
but I
question
mean,
you asked.
that's actually that's fair, and that's getting fixed in the next expansion.
Yes, I
Um,
am very excited. My wife is excited because she can come back and start playing again because she loathes being on a PvP server. Um, but I mean, in terms of, I didn't find myself wanting to level an alt in Legion. I have 3 characters that are max, though one of them I kind of paid my way to get there.
oh
Uh,
my goodness!
I used a character boost,
Right.
only to get to 100, I think, at the time. So I have the chamois, a mage, and a priest
Mm-hmm.
that are all level 110. I
Mm-hmm.
do have other characters that are at various stages of being leveled because I'll get on a whim of wanting to play a rogue, and then I'll play it for like a day or so and go, haha, this is why I didn't want to play a rogue before.
Right.
Or various different stages. And then I'll just, every so often, I'll come back and keep leveling them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really feel the need the drive to really level up a bunch of characters because I took a break from it for so long that I spent probably like 2 months just playing through all of the content that I had missed on my main.
Right. Right. Yeah. What did you think about it, Ozzy?
I think anyone who complains about the ability to level an alt or gear an alt in this expansion um, just honestly doesn't have friends, because I mean
No,
like
hold on here, because he's actually onto something. Go ahead.
it's so easy. It's so easy. Like, I mean, my Death Knight went from uh, a fresh 110 to tanking Mythic plus 10s in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tanking 15s in a week.
Right.
And I had my artifact weapon, like functionally oh yeah, it never caps, but functionally 75 capped in 2 weeks of not farming. Like this is not me like playing, 10, 12 hours a day. Like this is like within a month, I'd say I was able to tank at a heroic level. Now, I'm not a mythic raider.
Right.
I don't, that's not my, it's not my cup of tea,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But it, there was I was watching a streamer that literally went from 880 item level, which is just very very average, to 930 in 2 or 3 or 4 hours, something like that. Now he has friends that are very geared and were able to help him by passing him loot and things like that. So
Hmm.
this isn't like you. If I was alone and didn't have friends to help me along the way, yeah, it may have been a little bit more difficult. But to be honest, like with friends, with an amazing guild, with people who are willing to say, hey, let's group together and find an efficient way to put gear on this person, there you go. Like easy peasy.
I I agree. I mean, we saw it with my druid. I switched characters mid expansion. Went from God, I think I did it twice. I went from a monk to a shaman, and then from a shaman to a druid. And specifically with the druid, which was the one I switched to most recently, man, we just got a whole bunch of leather wares, put them in a group, and did, the very basic progression system of leveling an alt so that he can get to rating, where you do some normal dungeons, and then you do some heroics, then you do low level mythic, and then you move into mythic plus, and, normal and heroic raid ready within, I want to say, maybe a single reset.
Yeah.
So basically having two resets worth of loot. Now, I absolutely abhor farmable content, and by that I mean like content that you have to do weekly. So my artifact trades suffered because of that, because I wasn't really willing to put in the time and the effort, the limited effort that is required to do your dailies. Um, but gearing was just so easy, and artifact power, if you're doing the content that is out there, and compounded of course by artifact knowledge, your weapon levels up so quickly.
So I mean, to put it in perspective, as a joke, when I when I hit 110 on my Death Knight, I knew that our artifact knowledge was, which is, for those that don't play World of Warcraft that are listening, so basically imagine leveling up your weapon using items that kind of enhance the strength and power of your weapon, and let you kind of use a skill tree to kind of make your weapons super powerful. Well, your artifact knowledge is a multiplier. So an item that in the beginning of the expansion that may have given you 10 points towards your artifact weapon, now you're getting like 1.2 million. So, and the artifact power gains that you get, or the artifact knowledge, it's necessary because at this point, to put it in perspective, I need 808 uh million billion billion artifact points to get to artifact power points to get to the next level. So
Right.
there's people who need billions and trillions, and it gets insane. So they have this multiplier that lets you go. I specifically didn't put any points into my weapon until I had completed a few dungeons where I knew I was going to just have heaps of points, and it was insane. Like the level gains were just out of this world. Like the game couldn't keep up with how fast my weapon was leveling.
Yeah, I mean, like you use one item and you're automatically level like 53 or
Yeah.
level 50 on your artifact. Um, People, I for the most part, even though I say I hate leveling alts, I do have three different characters. I did not find leveling alts to be an issue at all. I think the big catch is for the people that did hate the process of artifact power, and having to basically start anew on characters earlier on within the expansion. Like, I think that's the big crux of this, is people that leveled characters early on when artifact knowledge was extremely low. Yeah, they had to put in the time. They had a lot of work to do. But people that did it later, where your artifact knowledge modifier is like times 5,550% or something like that, went really fast for them. Well, now we're doing the Heart of Azeroth, and we're doing Azerite, which is a very similar system to Artifact and Artifact knowledge. And people that didn't like it are like, well, nothing changed. We're going to have to do it all over again. And they don't want that. You know, to them, I got nothing for you.
Well, I don't think they're. I mean, everyone's entitled to an opinion. I don't think they're right in this instance, and the reason I say that is the beef I have with artifact points, artifact power, is as let's say a Death Knight with 3 specs. Like you have 3 different artifact weapons, and you have to take your artifact points, and you have to feed them into each. You have to make a choice. Like, okay, I want to beef up this weapon first, or I want to beef up this weapon first, or I'm gonna like slightly enhance a couple of weapons.
Right.
So it does take a little while and some decision making where you're splitting your efforts. And in the beginning of the expansion, I played a druid, and I literally had 3 specs that I played regularly.
Yeah.
So taking artifact power and putting it into 3 different weapons meant that none of my 3 were as good as people who focused on one specific
Yeah, I mean,
class
it's
and
very
spec.
much like the whole jack of all trades, master of none type issue.
Right.
Um,
But now with there being Azurite, it doesn't matter. It all feeds into the same thing.
right.
So theoretically, like as a druid who had 3 specs, I would have had all 3 be a little bit more powerful. Maybe like the scaling would be a little bit different, but I think at the very minimum, you'd have more. Um, like I wouldn't feel so behind.
Mm-hmm.
Where I felt that way with my druid.
Mm-hmm. I hear you, and I for the most part I agree with you completely. Was there anything else in this Q&A that they talked about that we want to cover? Like I honestly don't think there was. I think that's pretty much it. They talked a little bit about itemization and secondary stats being overly strong versus primary stats. Um, that's never something I've had a problem with personally. Stats are stats, as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. Allied races. Oh, 2 new confirmed allied races. Is that correct? The Magar orcs and the Kol-Turan humans.
Yeah. So it's basically like a recolor of orcs and a recolor of human.
They're putting so much work into this expansion. Just like the people did in writing their questions for this Q&A. Oh,
Wah,
goodness.
wah.
Wah, wah, wah. Oh, Dan's still there. Welcome back, Dan.
I am still here.
Welcome back.
Cruising the
Like,
Apple Store now.
Nice. Oh, Dan. Okay, fine. You know what? We're going to move on. We're going to move on because I do believe we've pretty much covered everything. Dan, I've got something I know you're going to have an opinion on. Your
Okay.
man from Canada got kicked off of my Dallas Fuel team. What is it with you guys sending us your trash? Okay, you send us Justin Bieber, and we have to take him, and now you send us XQC, and now he's been kicked off of the Dallas Fuel. What? Why? Why do you Canadians do this?
'Cause we don't want our trash, so we send them to you, and you guys seem to be more than content with taking them, so.
Damn, that's a good answer. XQC, who, man, he's been having a rough time. Obviously, he's been probably the most controversial Overwatch League player since the Overwatch League started. He was suspended earlier, and he recently got suspended again. And Dallas finally said, you know what, no, we've had enough. Shortly after his previous suspension, in which the Dallas Fuel team released a press release in which they were like, no, we support Felix XQC Lingual, and we're going to do everything we can to help him through these troubles. We're offering this and this and this in order to help him succeed. No one wants to see him succeed more than we do. What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't really know. Like, who really knows what they actually did to help him? I mean, they may have offered him a ton of support. I really hope that that's the case, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was just like, no, I'm good. And then things just went this way. I hope that's the case, as opposed to it was just lip service and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right.
This...
But I mean, everybody knows my thoughts on XQC, so we'll just leave it at that.
Is this something the Overwatch League is going to be able to get past? Like, do these professional gamers have what it takes to understand that what they're doing has legitimate ramifications on the success that they see? Like, it's not just, hey, I'm on Twitch and I'm streaming and maybe I'm going to be a dick and I'm going to lose a couple followers. These kids are just destroying their livelihoods. Like, they're not mature enough to be in these positions. And is this just something we're going to see over and over again?
I personally think so. So I look at esports right now. It's in its infancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, as in our previous ones, immediately compare them to the other professional athletic sports leagues.
Mm-hmm.
And even more so with hockey, you don't see this kind of thing happening all that often. And I think it's just something that if Blizzard really wants to grow this, it's just going to be a learning process, and teams are just going to have to figure out how they're going to maybe hesitate to say tame the more wild players out there that are good, but I think eventually if they're going to continue to grow this, it'll even out. They'll figure it out.
I think a comparable analogy would be to the NFL. There were now, if a professional football player, as a part of their becoming a person who plays for the National Football League, has to actually take like financial management courses,
right?
Because the NFL got tired of their people ending up bankrupt and like destitute, and and it's a very similar, not exactly the same, obviously, but you can draw some comparisons where you have people who may not be accustomed to having all this money, all this attention, all of this wealth, all of this fame thrown at them, and they just don't know how to handle it. And certainly, not only do you have that, but at least in the NFL, you have people who went through college. Like, these are kids that, like, in some cases, skipped college just so that they could play video games. I mean,
right.
I think that it will be something that has to get addressed, and I think that it will probably get a little bit worse to an extent, because I think that it's really, really easy to be toxic, and it's less it kind of like the shock value of it. Like, if you're getting more attention, that can be intoxicating, and you're gonna want more and more and more attention, and then all of a sudden it's gonna bite you in the rear end, and that's it. You're gonna end up like he did and lose everything all at once. And I'm sure he's going, wait, what just happened? I was like, everybody was talking about me. Why is everybody so mad? I don't get it. Well, there you go.
I don't know. It seems like such common sense to me. And I feel like it should seem like common sense to these Overwatch players that anything and everything that you do or you say on the internet is going to be seen by everyone else, and you don't get to make snarky, we can call them racially insensitive, we can call them racially charged emotes and memes, or make derogatory comments based on somebody's sexual orientation. Like, you don't get to do these things and not have it come back and bite you. Like, it's the fucking internet. Whatever you put on the internet, it is there forever. Like, do these kids just not understand that these sorts of behaviors are not appropriate?
I don't think they do. I mean, honestly, I know people that back in the beginning days of like MySpace and Facebook. I mean, to throw things, Friendster, stuff like that, like all these old social media things, people would like women, young ladies that I knew would put all of their information on there, their phone numbers, their addresses, their this, their that, their pictures, and without really thinking through, like, hey, is this safe? Like, do I know, or do I have a way of controlling who can see this and who's going to do that? And I mean, one of the things that I would scream from the top of my ivory tower was, hey, for crying out loud, get all that stuff off the internet, because you know what? Not to be like super paranoid, but God forbid the wrong person gets the wrong idea and has complete access to everything.
But
And that's
Ozzy,
exactly what you're saying.
isn't that the difference though? You're talking Facebook. You're talking a long time ago. Social media is in its infancy. It's relatively new. And you're talking about what people were doing then versus what XQC and these Overwatch players are doing that have literally been brought up on the internet and on the video game culture. And
But
I
I
mean,
think,
maybe that's
but I
to their
think he has a
detriment.
point. I think he
Okay.
has a point that we, being largely at least 10 years to 15 years older than these kids playing
God, we're so fucking
right
old.
now, we grew up and kind of learned how to act and be responsible on the internet, because we were already mostly adults by the time that these things came around,
Okay, that's
right?
fair.
Whereas these guys and soon to be ladies are growing up in it already. They don't
So
have.
they're like in their own little bubble, and this is all they see. So like
Yeah.
this is their
Yeah.
behavior basically. I think that's fair. That's a fair way to look at it. Uh, do you think this is the right move from Dallas?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. How about
Yes.
you, Ozzy?
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. You have to,
He's
you have to set boundaries, and you have to set limitations, and you have to show that you're willing to make the tough decisions, even if he was their best player, which honestly I don't know that he was. It
I don't know
doesn't
that he
matter.
played enough to be their
Like,
best
yeah,
player.
really, that's true. But I mean, you have to say, look, we're gonna uh, make a call based on moral authority rather than our desire to win. And I think that's the right decision, because honestly, if anything, it's gonna show other players, like, whoa, wait a second, maybe they'll start to take a second thought about what they're about to say, or who they're about to talk about, and what they're gonna do on the internet. Like,
But I mean, but it is also from a stance of we want to win, because he is regarded as one of the best Winston players,
mhm.
and that's great. But if you're not playing, then you're not helping the team. It's like a player who in the NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, who is constantly being suspended, who plays, for less than half of the games of the year,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I guess
Do
at
you
that
do
point
you
you're a
want
waste of cap
that player
space.
on your team?
Yeah, yeah, you're a waste of cap
Yeah.
space. You're a waste of a roster spot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair. Well, good luck to XQC. Hopefully he'll figure shit out. We'll see what happens with that. I'm sure he'll just, I'm sure he's upset that this happened, but I'm also sure he's of the mindset, well, I'll just go back to streaming. I was making a living then. I'll make the same, living now. Going back to Twitch, doing whatever. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's move on now to Hearthstone. Have announced a new expansion titled The Witchwood. which is going to be a horror-themed set, with werewolves and ghosts. If you have played Magic the Gathering, it sounds like it's going to be extremely similar to Innistrad set, which was a while back. And a couple cool new cards that they have released. Certain cards that have a start of game ability where your deck is buffed based on whether or not your deck only contains even or odd cost cards. So we'll see what happens there. And then you have two new keywords. Rush, which is basically similar to Charge, except when you have Rush, you cannot immediately attack the opposing hero. When you're summoned, you can only attack a minion with that creature, which, going back to Magic the Gathering, very similar to Haste, can attack the turn it was summoned. And then Echo, which adds a copy of a card to your hand, which you can play repeatedly until the turn ends. I don't think that has any Magic the Gathering comparison directly. Probably a couple cards like it. Hey, more Hearthstone.
Yay!
Dan, I know you don't play much. Do you play much at all, Ozzy?
I do. I know they also did a patch recently that was centered around the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mostly, to be completely honest, I got back. I used to play Hearthstone, but then I got sick and tired of spending money on it, and
Mm-hmm.
then and then I started playing when they released the like free dungeon stuff. And I really, really enjoyed that, and it kind of got me back into it. So I usually do like the brawls, and I tried my hand at arenas, and they basically changed the way that arenas worked. The arena draw mechanics, so that like for the like choosing cards and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, you know, I'm not a huge Hearthstone person. This expansion looks pretty fun. It actually looks like something I might actually spend money on. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I mean, this game is still going strong. It still is still one of the top things on Twitch. I mean, they're making a killing with this.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you consider how much they had to invest in making a game like World of Warcraft versus how much they had to invest in something like Hearthstone, and then you look at the return, Hearthstone is just an amazing investment as far as Blizzard is concerned, I'm sure. Uh, Sometime in 2018 is when this is supposed to come out. There's going to be a new single player game mode called Monster Hunt as well, which will be similar to Dungeon Run. So, yeah, we'll see. I enjoy Hearthstone. I enjoy Magic the Gathering more, so that's where I sink all of my money. But, yeah.
I'll pick up the free packs.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. I actually, so it's funny you say that. It was yesterday. I was going through my Battle.net launcher and I was looking at all my video games and I was like, man, I only have World of Warcraft installed. I should really install Destiny and Hearthstone and StarCraft and maybe install Destiny 2 again. Maybe not. So I installed Hearthstone and I logged in for the first time in months, maybe a year. It's been an extremely long time. And I had like 18 free packs to open. I was like, where did all these packs come from? Like they're just giving me packs. So I opened all these packs and got absolutely nothing. So it was super excited, totally worth it. Played a couple games and got absolutely wrecked and was like, yeah, we'll try another time. And that's my story. So that's good news for all you Hearthstone fans out there, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it some more as time goes on. But we are also going to move on, and we're going to talk about a little bit of Tomb Raider. So movie comes out tomorrow. Screenings have been going on today. And also, we get confirmation that the new Tomb Raider game called Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which was actually leaked a long time ago. I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a photo that was posted on, maybe it was 4chan or maybe it was Reddit, and some guy was on a subway and looked down to his left at a guy that was sitting in a seat working on his laptop, and the guy was working on a presentation for something titled Shadow of the Tomb Raider, like a PowerPoint presentation. So he took out his camera, surreptitiously took a photo of it, and then posted it on the internet, and thus, you know, Shadow of the Tomb Raider confirmed. But now we know it is actually confirmed. September 14th, coming to the PS4, Xbox One, and PC, simultaneous release. Thank God.
I was gonna say that the biggest news for me out of that, it was the simultaneous release. So it looks like Microsoft has ended its timed exclusivity deal.
Partial exclusivity. Oh my goodness, that entire thing was absolutely ridiculous when it went down with the last Tomb Raider game. Is it exclusive to Xbox? Yes, no. Can we get a straight answer? Yes, no. So it's exciting. We're gonna see a new we're gonna see a new Tomb Raider game. I think that was a foregone conclusion. A little bit surprised that it's coming out this year, in September of this year.
Yep.
I would assume that the reason they announced it right now is because the movie's coming out, and they were like, well, let's get as much of Tomb Raider into the news cycle as we possibly can, so people are like, oh, Tomb Raider's a thing, let's go see the movie.
Well, I imagine they probably have ads in the trailer space for the game in the movie, so.
We will have to see. Reviews are out for the movie, and we looked at a couple places earlier today. I think you said IMDb, it's got like a 71 or a 72.
Yeah, that's of users.
For users, and then Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 51 for a critic score. Ozzy, are you going to go see this movie? Do you even care about Tomb Raider?
Well, I actually kind of want to see it. I don't really care about Tomb Raider, but I do want to see it. It looks like a good kind of action movie.
Yeah.
And I'm always down for a nice action movie where I don't have to think very hard.
I agree. Go ahead.
I am skeptical about like the professional critics versus like your average Joe Blow enjoying the movie. Like, I think that Rotten Tomatoes has been pretty rotten lately when it comes to their movie analysis. So I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting. It's something I'd see. It's not something that I've thought, oh no, I absolutely don't want to see it. I didn't care for the Angelina Jolie like
films
at all. Like, I thought they were absolutely garbage. I think there was 2, right?
Yes. There's Cradle of Life and
I believe Cradle of Life was the second one.
What's the second
one?
The
first one was just Tomb Raider.
Just Tomb Raider. Yeah,
like
that
believe
sounds
so.
about right.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I'm excited. I will definitely go see a new Tomb Raider movie. I'm a little bit less excited as somebody that has played the game that this movie is based on. Because basically this is the movie adaptation of the origin story of Lara Croft as it was rebooted back with the Tomb Raider reboot in 2013. And if you look at some of the promotional material, and if you look at some of the, like the preview videos, a lot of this comes shot for shot from the original video game that came out in 2013 that it's based on. So I'm a little bit nervous that I've already had this experience, from playing the video game. I guess it's going to depend entirely upon how the production company and how the writers and directors actually differentiate the story from the story within the 2013 video game. We'll have to see.
Yep.
No, that's pretty
Yep.
much it. So let's see. We have a couple more things to cover. Real quick, PS4 System Software Update 5.50 has been launched. This actually happened on the 8th, so if you haven't updated your PlayStation 4, well, honestly, you probably already have, because when they launch one of these updates, it's like a freaking Jack Russell Terrier bouncing up and down saying, hey, you need to update your PlayStation. Update your PlayStation. Custom wallpapers, playtime management for the children, which is a little bit of a hot button issue. As we know, video games and violence, etc., etc. PlayStation has already had a very robust way to allow parents to basically control the content that their children consume, but until this recent patch, they did not have a way to limit the amount of time that their children were playing on the PS4. That is now available, and the PS4 Pro is getting a super sampling mode, which basically allows for increased fidelity. It's a way to basically brute force a form of anti-aliasing, which basically cleans up the jaggies on an image for video games that do not natively support the PS4 Pro. So basically the title renders at 2160p, and then it downscales the image to a 1080p, puts it onto your TV, and then it's a far more refined image for when you're playing video games. So that is very neat. It's actually something that the Xbox One X has done since the day it came out, I believe. So way to catch up, Sony. I mean, they've had their console out for how much longer than the Xbox One X, and they finally released super sampling mode. Yeah, whatever. And and now we're gonna move on to something that why can't this just happen, Dan? Why can't we just have cross-platform play between everyone? Why can't we all just get along?
Because Sony's the worst.
So we're talking about Fortnite here. They are going to be releasing a mobile version of the crazy huge game Fortnite Battle Royale for iOS and Android devices. And you can sign up right now to get a chance to play it. And they are fostering crossplay. So long as it's not between your PS4 and your best friend's Xbox One. So if you're on the PlayStation 4, you can play against people on the PC, on an Apple computer, on Android or iOS. And if you're on the Xbox One, you can play against people on the PC, the Mac, or the Android or the iOS, but not the PlayStation 4. This is extremely frustrating because we know this works. Okay, back in September, Epic Games enabled crossplay accidentally, supposedly, between the Xbox One and the PS4 versions of the game, and people were playing together that were not supposed to be able to. So we know this works, and we don't know, but we know it's basically Sony cock-blocking the entire idea, saying, no, we're not going to allow this because we have the lead in console sales, and if I have a customer that owns a PS4 and he wants to play with his friend, then damn it, his friend needs to buy a PS4 and not play with him on his Xbox One.
Yep.
It's
pretty much
so shitty, and it's so anti-consumer, and I don't know why I'm so upset about this, but I really am, because fucking video games are about bringing people together and allowing you to play with your friends that are halfway across the world. It's not about charging someone $250 or $350 so that they can then buy a $60 video game or in this case, you know, technically I believe it's free. You can download it for free. But in other situations, buying a video game and then pay your $15 a month for PlayStation Plus or Xbox Gold or however much it is, and then finally be able to play with their friends. Like, I am a Sony fanboy, but this is one issue where I will throw Sony to the dogs. It's absolutely ridiculous that we don't have this. And that
Agreed.
that is me stepping off my soapbox.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand on a business model standpoint why they don't want to be like, I if everything becomes cross-platform, then what could theoretically happen is Xbox could just come up with a more technologically advanced console, and then everyone would buy that and they're done.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, which they've already done.
which,
You know, the
well,
Xbox
you know,
One
but
X absolutely wipes the floor with the PlayStation 4 Pro.
But what you don't have is those exclusive games. So once
Right.
you have those specific titles that are only available to people who have a PlayStation, and that's kind of where they get to keep their almost like mini sort of monopoly, but not exactly. Like, it's kind of like how they can retain their fan base. You know,
I
they can say,
I
look,
I agree with
but
you, but honestly, how many freaking PlayStation 4s or Xbox Ones is a title like Fortnite going to actually sell? Like, these are not titles that dictate whether or not a company is profitable when it comes to selling consoles. These are not console moving titles. The fucking game where you play an RC car and you hit a soccer ball and you try to get into a goal. What's it called? Somebody
Rocket
help.
League.
Rocket League. Thank you. That is not a title that is going to sell consoles. Let's just get crossplay for these video games that people enjoy playing, but that we know are not console sellers. You know, unlike, you know, the Zeldas or the Forzas or the Gears of War, you know, Gran Turismo. You still have these titles.
yeah, but once you unlock that ability, then it becomes really, really hard to say, well, we've decided not to let this particular game be crossplay because we want to keep this exclusive to us. Like, it becomes really, really hard to hold on to that. Now, again, I agree with you. Like, I think crossplay should be the case, like 100%. But from a business standpoint, they're looking at it going, well, look, once those floodgates are opened, there's no way to rationally tell people, look, no, we can't do this anymore. Well, why not? We did it with these, just like you're saying now, with that other game, they were able to do it. They would run into the same problem, only magnified so much worse.
What do you think, Dan? Dan.
Again, I do get it from a business standpoint as to why. Like, I don't really think there's any benefit for PlayStation to do it. And if there's no real benefit for them, then what's the point?
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to.
I mean, basically, Microsoft's in the best position right now because they can keep going, hey guys,
yeah, we're
we
trying.
want you
Like,
to be
we're
able
doing
to
our
play.
best.
Like
So
you
Sony's
guys
the
go
big
over.
bad.
Yeah, exactly. Go give Sony
The
a load of
umpteenth
crap
degree.
because we want you to play together. We're your friend.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
goodness. My goodness. All right, so I guess that is everything we wanted to talk about.
I have one more that I just
Oh
kind of came
my
across.
God, Dan,
One
just
more.
All right, let's add it.
It'll be short. It'll be short.
Will it be
Detroit
short?
Become Human has a release date.
It does, and it has.
It has a terrible cover.
It has box art. This is so weird. I was actually gonna bring this up on an earlier show, but decided not to. But now that you've brought it up, we're gonna talk about it. So evidently, like, the half face on the cover art for your video game is almost like a meme, and I didn't know this. and it's supposed to convey, like sort of like the mystery of the video game. It's supposed to make the character on the box, seem more mysterious. And it just looks dumb.
Yeah, well, it makes me think of like the old Tony Hawk games, like the early 2000s games, right? Where
Yes.
that seemed to be all the rage from the early 2000s was the close-up face, half of the face.
Half of the face.
I mean, Warcraft 3 did it with their characters.
Yeah.
They may not have been half the face, but they did the same thing with like Arthas, Kel'Thuzad, generic
it
Night
was
Elf,
huge back
an
in
orc.
the day. Or,
Yeah.
like just the giant face that's really close up, like they did for the box art on Wrath of the Lich King, where it was just like the Lich King's like giant honking face.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the release date for Detroit Become Human?
May 25th. It's a lot sooner than I thought.
Huh.
Yeah.
That is relatively soon.
Yep.
Already a controversial game because there are scenes of quote-unquote simulated child abuse within the video game.
Right.
You can show it in a movie. You can put it in a book. All right, there's probably even paintings of it. But God forbid it shows up in a video game. And even situationally, within context of the video game, you are not the person doing the abuse. Let me just get that out there right now. Okay?
Yep.
You are basically playing the maid in this household who also is an android. And you see a father abusing a child. Okay? And you can make a decision how to react to that instance of simulated child abuse. But this is already a huge controversy. We've already had child advocate groups coming and, like tearing down Quantic Dream, excuse me, whatever they're called, over this one scene that was leaked with as very little context as I have described to you, because that's really all we saw. Oh man, I mean, they've done a lot of controversial things in the past, as far as their video games are concerned, so I guess this is not new territory for them. And then of course there was the there was an extremely highly charged article written about the work environment over at the company Quantic Dream, talking about how it was a terrible environment that bred, like sexual harassment and so on and so forth. So, man, I had a lot to say about this title that I didn't even know.
A lot more than you thought.
Like, I did not even know. This is your fault for bringing it up. You said it was going to be something short, and I've been talking for like the last 5 minutes about it.
No regrets.
No regrets. No regrets at all. Are you excited to play this game at all?
I had largely forgotten about it up until
that's fair.
up until tonight. But I do remember seeing the demos of it at E3, I believe, last year, and I thought it looked interesting. I loved Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, was made by the same developers.
It was Heavy Rain, and then they also made Beyond Two Souls, which was the game with what's her name? Female actress. Ellen Page, I believe.
Oh, right. I have not played that one.
Yeah, she did all of the mocap and all of the voice work for Beyond Two Souls, which I played. I thought it was absolutely amazing.
And probably lesser known is they did the Indigo Prophecy.
Oh, that was a
very long. That was
right?
That was 2005.
Yeah, boy, that was a long.
But I remember playing that, and I liked it back in the time. So, I mean, even Heavy Rain's old at this point, 8 years old.
Yeah, it's still a good game. Still holds up extremely well. But all of their games do, because of sort of the art direction.
Yes.
And the fact that you don't have to rely on a whole bunch of special effects, because it's all about motion capture and it's all about the actual character models. And then, of course, the story, which is huge. I'm excited. I've been excited for this title since, gosh, what was it? It was a technical demo for the PlayStation. Was it the PS3? It might have been the PS3 called
Probably.
Kara? Quantum. Is it Quantum or Quantic Dream?
Quantic.
Quantic Dream. Kara. So, back from 2012, they did a short movie called Kara, which was basically it was a technical demo for the PlayStation 3.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it.
And it shows an android, almost like in an android factory, where they wake her up and they go through sort of this systems check. And they ask her all these questions about it. And she starts asking them questions, basically about free will. And it's just an extremely well done tech demo. You really got pulled into this character, this android, because she seemed scared about the situation she was in. She seemed like, and you could tell on her face, she was going through all of these emotions as she's getting woken up, and she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know what's happening to her. And it was just a very impressive tech demo. And that character, from what I understand, is in Detroit Become Human. Like, this is basically a continuation of that tech demo.
Right.
So if you haven't seen that tech demo, you should definitely check it out. Obviously, it's on YouTube.
I'll definitely have to rewatch it because it was probably 6 years ago that I watched it. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. We'll have to see. I'm sure the game will do well, but I'm also sure it's not going to be a huge seller, as their games tend to be, more like niche titles, where they are extremely well received from a critical standpoint, but the larger population of gamers as a whole is kind of like,
yeah.
yeah, it looks good, it's cool. So we'll see. All right, Dan, you brought that upon yourself. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, fine sir?
Oh man, what? You're letting me talk.
All right,
Hmm.
how's your London team doing? Oh, they've
London.
been losing games, haven't they?
N-
Fired their
since
coach, lost a couple
since they
games.
well no since they fired or let go or contract ended or I don't know what it was. Since Bishop left, they are 1-1.
1-1,
Yeah.
50%. Ozzy, do
Yes,
you have
sir.
anything you would like to talk about before we close out this show?
Hey, we've covered a lot of bases. I'm just thankful to be here.
We have rounded the bases. Like, every base has been covered. Well then, guys and gals, we would greatly appreciate it if you would like this video, if you liked it. I guess you can thumbs down it if you want to, but that's not really what we want, so don't do that. You can comment below if you would like to. We would absolutely love to hear from you. But I think that is about all we are going to cover today. I think we are finally done.
Woo.
It has been real. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. I am David.
I'm Dan.
And this is Pedrom.
And we will talk to you again soon.